Hi everyone, can you see me? Welcome to our final week 14 presentation. We've eventually got here. I can't believe it. It seems to have taken a while, but it's also gone in a blur as well. So another day closer to hopefully getting more freedom in our life. But I think I was hearing on the news that this is going to be going on for 2022. So it still is a long event to go. So welcome. Tonight or this evening, we're going to look at best language teaching practices. Hopefully we can just draw some things together from all the things we've been chatting about over the last semester, and maybe just put a bit of practical application as an English language teacher for all of you, especially coming with first additional, with most of your students trying to acquire the second language, that these practices may assist you in at this point. Right, but before we get there, as usual, we're going to look at tasks and activities and assignments. We have got through quite a bit on online tracking, and as you can see as I'm scrolling down, week 11, 12, and 13 are now over. You finish up with week 13 on the 26th of June, and that's going to be your final online tracking event. I mean, how awesome is that? And then assignments, assignment 3 has now been submitted. I see they all have come in. There's been a few hiccups, but hopefully they're all in now. And then just quickly tell you that the link for assignment 4 is now on ECI, and you've got opened it today, so you've got from the 24th to the 30th to actually submit. It closes on the 30th of June at midnight. Okay, so that's it, and man down, we finished with that. Just remember your course reflection, that is your final assignment. I see some of them already coming in, where you are actually going to be looking at your TEFF or FS experience as a language teacher, also as how have you experienced distant learning, just bringing in specific examples, perspectives that you've acquired, the challenges, personal achievements as well. So those are things you're going to mention, and then how we could make this a better course. I'm sure you all have wonderful ideas for that. Okay, right, so it's your reflections that are important, 5,500 words, and obviously specific examples and reasons to support anything you say. Don't forget your references. Okay, and then we always have our little task assessment here and how things are going. Where you can see we are in week 13 now. Closes on Friday night, and as you can see, only 3 FET have submitted their online tracking and 7 SPs. Hopefully those numbers will grow. I see it grew to 17 for last week, the previous week. And then a concerning point is that assignment 3, only 17 SPs have actually submitted assignment 3, although it has closed, and 15 FETs. It's a lot more than the online tracking events, but I'm not too sure if that figure, I'm sure it's wrong, it must be 5, I think it is. Okay, so those things always make me feel a bit down. So just let me know if there are any issues. Okay, right, and this is unit 3 again, which started at week 7. We've gone through all the reading, drama, literature, visual literacy, appropriate resources, and tonight we're going to look at best language teaching practices to put some perspective on the classroom as well. And if we look at good practice, we've got to look at the process, our knowledge, our skills, and our values, because these all impact on our teaching. Right, just to have a look at global students. All right, I've taught all over the world, and students are all the same. This perspective of my lovely experience with Stadio, with all the lovely PGCE teachers who I met in January. I think Simon's there in the back as well, so just to remind you where we're all coming from, and we're all here to support you. That's some of my students in the UAE, more of them. You can see quite an international cosmopolitan group of students, as much as you are. This was in Ras Al Khaimah, of a big project we put together, where they are picking up garbage and to be anti-pollution around the university as part of their projects. And here we are back in South Africa with the schools that I'm involved with in the northern areas. This is Bethelsdorp High School, and I go there to support English teachers. We have a wonderful experience together. There they are. This is actually Cowan High School, all feeling very, very excited to be in the classroom. There I am with them. So teaching is such a positive experience, and I know teachers have got so much to give in the classroom as well, especially as language teachers. Okay, let's move on. So tonight, we're going to look at literacy acquisition models. Even if you are home language, literacy acquisition is so important. Then we can look at different practices based on copying models and modeling practices. Then we're going to look at the guided practice model, which I really believe in. And then look at some kind of imaginative teaching practices using the guided practice model. And then we're going to come to some kind of conclusion. Okay. Right, let's look at second language acquisition. We all have our target language and we all have our additional languages, and they both impact on each other. So if you look at this iceberg analogy, we've got our second language as one of the peaks of the iceberg, and we've got our first language as the other peak. And then we've got our common underlying proficiency systems at the bottom. They all come together to support both of these languages. So it is really important to develop both L1 and L2 to have total language proficiency. If only our L1 is developed, it's going to impact our L2. We're never going to be a good L2 student if we haven't got our first language proficiency going. Right, so first language, properly developed, reading, writing, speaking. If you're a good first language student, you're going to be a good second language student. So the importance of developing both these proficiencies so we can have total language proficiency. Right, this is another thing about the whole fixation of grammar and rules that we traditionally have come from, and the need to break away from this. I marked many of your first assignments, your lesson plans, and I can see that you're all still infatuated with grammar rules. However, Krashen says that this structure and this knowledge is very fragile and it is rapidly forgotten by your students. It's not remembered. You might think you're teaching them present, past, or future tenses, but tomorrow they're going to forget about it. You might think that teaching parts of speech are important, but it's not really going to be practically remembered by them. So here again, we have the analogy of the iceberg. And this is what happens, is that if we traditionally structure everything around grammar, it only focuses on the tip of the iceberg. And whatever instruction you give them will soon melt away, and they will not remember it. So if you're going to be fixated about teaching grammar all the time, remember, this is very limited, and much of what you teach will not be remembered by your students or applied in meaningful communication. I'm going to look again at Cummins' iceberg model, because this also supports the second language acquisition understanding. And we look again at BICS, basic language proficiency. And this kind of proficiency, your conversational skills, is also very, very surface. It's also the top of the iceberg. So if you're going to concentrate on pronunciation, vocabulary, grammar, bit of comprehension, it's all basic. And it's not going to develop your cognitive academic language proficiency in the classroom. So BICS, and I think if you remember the case study from Anna Ferreira, BICS does not equal CAL proficiency. So if you're going to be in the classroom stuck on grammar teaching, just know that your students are not going to develop the deeper academic language proficiency. There it is, right at the bottom, at the base. The cognitive academic language proficiency, which is analysis, synthesis, evaluations, it's all blooms and the higher cognitive levels that we need to get to in our questioning and in our teaching as well. Remember always the I+1, always go one beyond. More challenging stuff is needed by the students and not just easy stuff all the time. Okay, I thought this was also a nice, interesting analogy of the gear. Let me try and explain what it means. We've got a big gear and we've got two smaller ones, and I see the big gear as the school, society, community, friends, family, peers. It's a big gear and it goes slowly, but it really moves everything. Then we have the teacher battling it around there at the top there, trying to keep it going, doing their little bit, and we have little student. I think I see the smallest gear. All right. And that poor gear has got to really move very, very quickly to rotate faster and keep up with the momentum. However, this gear can change. If things go wrong in the big gear, everything can be impacted. If something goes wrong with the teaching gear, things will happen. So if you have a look at this model, we've got our language teachers as the bigger little gear, and I would class the teacher as the outsider to the community, to the school, to friends, who are all the insiders of the language. So we really are on the outside as language teachers. We've got all our knowledge, we've got our literacy knowledge, we've got our knowledge of academic rules and conventions, and we've got to try and unlock this knowledge within our students in a real and meaningful way. How do we do this? We've got the students who are also outsiders. They come from second language backgrounds. Their target language might be very different to ours. And they have sometimes trying to gain access to this proficiency, and they often have to invent or bluff or copy the discourse and the language expectations from within the classroom. And so this whole contraption is sometimes thought, and it doesn't actually really move forward. Okay. So because I spoke about discourse realities, this is quite an interesting concept. And academic language, this is our CALP, our Cognitive Academic Language Proficiency, is quite a very strict rule-based type of way we're going to write. So if we're writing an email or we're writing an academic essay, there's strict structures which we have to use. We can't use conversational and informal language that we use when chatting to our friends. It's a very strict way of writing, and this is sometimes very hard for students. So it's not the same as our conversational, casual language that we use in the playground or when we're chatting to our friends. It's got rules and it's got functions. You can't just use language in a can't and won't and gonna and all the jargon that we use when we're writing a formal essay. So this is what one of the students said to me. He said, I can't use my style and application from everyday life. And no, you can't when you are busy using academic discourse. Your topics won't get you there. And this is very, very difficult. This is what makes language teaching sort of more challenging. Academic language is a different language in many ways, but it is still another language. So it is foreign, it is difficult for many of our students. So these are some teacher reflections on their language teaching within the classroom that I had an interview with. And one of the teachers said, we lose a lot of students. I just don't think we have orientated them to think of what is expected of them. So I'm just looking at your lesson plans when you give instructions to the class. Sometimes I don't know what you want. You've got to be sure that your students know exactly what you expect of them. And this is going to be quite precise, overt, and specific. You can't just think they will know, they won't know. Another teacher says, we make assumptions about what they know and what they don't know. We make assumptions that they know that it's not right to quote verbatim. That is actually, they should quote verbatim, but this is a quote I got. So we make assumptions about so many things. We make assumptions that they know that a full stop must end a sentence. We make assumptions they know what direct speech is, and often they don't know these things. So be careful of your assumptions. Another teacher said, we need to spend more time orientating our students to what is expected of them academically. That takes time and it takes effort at times. And the last one is, perhaps I know what you do, that I do mention it in the class, but maybe it must be emphasized a lot more. So you think the students know exactly what they should do, but possibly they need to be reminded a lot more and instructed in that. Okay. Right, so what do we do to help students acquire language skills within the classroom? And as I said, academic language is actually a foreign language and is often in conflict with the students' home discourses. How they speak at home and how they speak, expected to speak in the academic essays are poles apart. And it's very hard to acquire this academic literacy. So Angela Carter says, we've got to allow them to try on the discourse, like putting on a new jersey or a dress or a t-shirt. So you've got to give them the experience of trying on the discourse, okay, in the classroom. And there's a whole lot of yellow underlinings. I hope you go and read them when you see the recording. So to learn this new discourse, students have to try it on. And how do we do this? We give them the lexis or the vocab important of the new discourse. So we have to involve vocab. We've got to look at the structure of an academic essay. We can't just say, go to them, introduce the essay. They're not going to know what to do. We can't just think they're going to know certain things. We've got to actually structure it. That means you might have to give them whole phrases or sentences as a model or a mosaic, she says, which helps them to get a sense of what they should be writing. And she also says at the end, this outcome might be totally unsuccessful and conflictual, okay? Conflict everything, the new academic language, the discourses, and possibly even be called plagiarism. But you are allowing them to try on the language. Give them a chance to practice and use words from others and from other texts to try on the language. Right, so what students need to try on? What do we need to try them on? So how do we help them to do this? We give them a large collection of text. Remember, I have been going on about being text-based all the time. You can't just go and teach grammar without a text. It must be text-based, because this will all serve as a model which helps them to understand how the text actually works in terms of content and the form of the text. Right, so their brains must work. They must see the text. They must see it as a model so they can understand how it should be structured, so they can see the content and the form of the text. And often they will need a lot of modeling to do this. Give them good and bad examples of what you want and what you don't want, so they actually know and they can see the differences. And here's another little lot of yellow underlinings. That means practicing comprehension strategies. So if you want them to be good at comprehension, you've got to give them lots of practice. Some of you did listening comprehension in your listening lesson plans, and in your reflections, the students often said this was difficult because the teacher just walks in and expects them to be able to do this. They should practice the listening comprehensions. They should practice the comprehension strategies before they're exposed to the tests. Then practice in paraphrasing things, using their own words, how to write summaries. And it says, use models and repeatedly show the students these models and how they should be used. Give them good essays to look at, give them poor essays to look at. And also show them inappropriate referencing so they know what good referencing is. So this means let them try it on, let them see and let them experience all the different forms so they can take it on. Right, so these are a few learner strategies to acquire the standard forms of the target language. As FAL students, how do they acquire just standard forms? And they often have to do this by performing, remember trying on, performing the works of others and thoroughly rehearsing, practicing language use. You can't just expect them to know it, they have to actually practice it. And here are a few ways they could do this, be scaffolded into doing this. And the first one I've got here is code switching. That means you allow them to use both L1 and L2 in the class to make meaning. So if they don't know the word in L2, let them use the L1 word. Code switching is not a problem. The teacher is using English, they are reading English, they are listening to English. If they have to use one of their mother tongue words, it's not a problem. Code switching is not a problem. Let them role play to adopt the different language styles. So they can pretend to be a prefect and a grade 8 student, and they have a conversation about not wearing a mask. Okay, so they have to role play these different incidents. Another way is apprenticing them. This is let them participate in real life activities. Let them thank somebody for coming to present something. Let them explain what happened on the weekend during a sport event. So let them do something that's real and participate in that. Code meshing is Kanajara. He comes up with the idea of code meshing, which is slightly different to code switching. And he says this is how they negotiate, appropriating the boundaries of L1 and L2. And he says, let them use their L1 also in the class, Afrikaans, isiXhosa, isiZulu, and then allow them to translate. This will also help them to appropriate the boundaries of the target language. So these are ways that you can negotiate. If there's really an issue of them understanding, let them use both in the classroom. Okay, So here's a theory for copying. I copy what you do, I model what you do, I try on what you're doing, and I practice the language. And this, on the right-hand side, I've got this. This is challenging and meaningful learning when you do this in the classroom. And that enables the learner to engage in officially sanctioned, correct discourses, right? When they see what the model is, when they see what other people are doing, and they can see how it's used, and then they can practice it in a correct way. And in this way, they can ultimately lead to learners' self-transformation of the language. So all these practices are going to help them to acquire academic discourse. Right, so my big theme tonight is going to be practicing for proficiency, the whole idea of practice, how important this is. And many students do not read or write English. I'm sure you know that, and they don't do proficiently by any means. And so trying to align their literate self and literacies is attention. So they've got to be able to read something, to write something, and because they never read or write, to align what they should be writing from what they're reading is attention within them. Right, so I've got this practice is so important. And after teaching for one semester, I should have realized this in South Africa long ago, teaching fell as well. I realized the need for modeling and practicing in language tasks. And this reinforces understanding and application as well, not only the understanding, but how to apply the knowledge that they've got and the rhetorical structures. So they will know how to apply past tense when they write a report because they've practiced it so often. Also to familiarize himself with questions and structures and how you answer things for tasks, tests, and exams. Don't expect them just to know how to answer a comprehension or how to write an essay. They must be familiarized and they must practice these structures as well. Right, so I'm going to look at guided practice structures. This is quite a model, fabulous model I came across, and it originated right in the 1980s, which is called the Madeleine-Hunter model. And now that seems like ancient to you, I'm sure, but I think it's got great relevance and it's still used actively today. And it's called the I do, we do, you do, or gradual release of responsibility model. So learning and the cognitive load should be shifted to students over time, not immediately. So you don't just say to them, you must just know this and you should understand it. You've got to shift it to them over time. And how do we do this? We do this firstly through teacher modeling. Teacher shows them. Then they collaboratively practice this within the classroom. And then finally, they do the individual application. They don't just take notes straight away by themselves. The teacher shows them how to, they practice it together, and then they only finally will do it by themselves. I'll take you through this a step at a time. So these are the guided practices. First of all, it's the modeling, and that's the first part, I do. So the teacher models with explicit examples using a variety of practices to reinforce, say, paragraphing, language structures, topic, sentence identification. So you will model it as the teacher with lots of examples, so they know what you're talking about. So that's the first part. Second part is, it's the we do together. That's the teacher and the learners do together. So you've got a task for them that is similar to what you've done, and they're going to practice with you, and you will scaffold them to consolidate the understanding and the application of the task. So you don't just expect them to do it, now you're working with them to do it. The third part, which is often neglected, is that they do it together, the collaborative peer practices. The whole class get together as groups and they do together. I was going through lesson plans again from assignment 1, and just so many of you have neglected the group practice type within the classroom. Remember, group work allows all students to participate because they all can talk and understand, whereas any of the others, you're limiting this practice happening because it's going to be either the teacher or a few of the goodies that will be actually answering all the questions. So allow them the stage 3 where they do it together. And then only finally do we get to the independent one. So they've gone through 3 stages, the teacher helping, group, and then finally number 4, they can do it independently. And you can see from my little visual there, it's quite a successful thing. So the students now will independently apply all these structures, whether it's paragraphing, inserting topic sentences, linking different paragraphs, and grammatical structures in their writing practice to demonstrate their understanding. So they're not just going to leave it at one level, they're going to take it to writing, or they're going to take it to speaking, or they're going to be doing some other activity to apply what they have learned. Right, so it's just a practice example, for instance. And I think I've shared with this before, but I'm just going to bring it back in again because it really is meaningful and really helped. And it's called feet. So what you do is you get students on an A4 piece of paper to draw an outline of their foot. And this is quite fun. Some of them don't like taking their shoes off, and they try and draw their feet themselves. They look something quite stupid like that. But you should try and insist they should draw their foot outline. It's quite fun, not their hand, but their foot, because this is part of the whole fun of the task. So this is what they do. And now you can see an example of one of my students' feet. And they write one sentence on that foot. So you can see they've done their foot outline and they will write one sentence, the first sentence. Be careful when you walk, and be careful how you step on me, or whatever it might be. So they will write one sentence, then they pass it on, and your peer will write the next sentence, which should link onto that. Then somebody will pass it on, the third sentence, and finally the fourth sentence. So in the end, you've got the 4 sentences, which will tell a story about the foot. Then they get their foot back, and they're quite excited to see what has happened in the story. So they're writing a story, they're constructing sentences, and they're trying to get the theme going from being careful with my foot. This one, the person was thanking his foot for being so kind to him and keeping him and smelling nice, I think. So that was the whole thing about that. This was another foot. You can see it's quite a realistic looking foot with the toenails and hey dude, that's how he starts. And I can see I've turned this into a poster. And he says, hey dude, try to reduce the distance on which you work every day because you easily get me tired. That was the first sentence. Then the story went on by that. What were they required to do with this? So besides writing, which was a fun activity, and following the theme, they were trying to look at what makes a paragraph coherent. Many students put many main ideas in one paragraph. They don't link their ideas. So the idea was to make them familiar with how you can make something coherent. So the first thing they had to do was try and look for key ideas, key words, words that are repeated. So if it was foot, 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 or feet, to underline all the key words that were repeated. If it had distance the whole time, or clean, or wash, those I would all underline. The second thing was look for pronouns, because that also gives coherence to paragraphs. You, your, I, me. Interesting, many of them just don't know what pronouns are, so it's good practice for them as well. And the final thing is the use of transitional devices, which is quite complex, advanced skill. Some of them had no transitional devices, things like finally, therefore, and, but. Yeah, I can see one, there's 2 ands then, are all examples of transitional devices. And you can see they quite like this. Drawing our foot and writing sentences on it was so much fun. So they really enjoyed this activity. Here's another example, example 2, also looking at linking practices. And first of all, the teacher starts with the students and the I do part with the students and gives them a paragraph. And in this paragraph, they have to also identify keywords. And here you've got e-business owners. It's in red, so it was repeated. So they can see the importance of repeating the main idea in different sentences. Then if they don't do that in their writing, you can say, you have not repeated your main idea anywhere in this paragraph, so it's not a coherent paragraph, I can't understand it. Then the use of your transitional devices. It gives type of flow within your paragraph, and there's 2 in this paragraph as a result. And finally, and so you'll say, I haven't seen any transitional devices. It gives coherence as well to your paragraph. And finally, the use of pronouns, because this prevents repetition of the keyword all the time and also gives coherence. So you've done this together, and it's quite nice because you've downloaded something for them and they can color it in and they can circle it. They can highlight it however they want to show the differences working with you. Then they go into their groups. You give them different paragraphs to work on. Here is just, does nature break the second law of thermodynamics? It doesn't matter what the topic is. They can even go and find their own topics, all right? And then they will do the same thing. You can see all the color coding. They will then identify, the reds will be all the pronouns. Okay, there's quite a few different pronouns. You can see all the reds there. The turquoise, there's only one there, will be the one translational device. And this is something you could discuss with them. It's so good to have more than one translational device. There's only one. Where else would we put one in? And then finally, the keywords. And you can see there's a whole series of ideas that are repeated here. So in this way, the groups are now doing it together, and they're practicing the use of cohesion and coherence by using these kind of linking words. And obviously, the last number 4 would be you do the independent study that they would have to do when they go and write their little paragraph. Yeah, so studying at SUC, and you can see all the little underlinings for keywords. You can see they've circled some things, they've got squares around some things. This one did it in color in terms of the origins of Valentine's Day, where they showed how they could demonstrate this kind of activity. The origins of Valentine's Day would be a personal, independent thing, but their own writing at the end would be what you'd want them to do, is to go and write a paragraph now where they demonstrate using these different techniques. Okay. Right, so what did the students think about this? This is a study I did with them. What did they think about practicing? They said the lecturer provides a lot of practice for students and makes it enjoy this and makes me want to try new things. So I think they feel more secure when they've practiced with you and they've practiced with their friends and they've learned it independently. So they've had many times to reinforce what they're supposed to understand. A lot of practice helps me understand. So another positive response to practicing. Practice sheets help me to improve my writing skills. So there's something interesting, that they learned how to improve their writing. So students, when you practice a lot, these were the responses to this kind of practice skill. Okay. This is also part of the study. I asked them what they enjoy about class. And here's a nice pie graph. And 42% of them said they like the teaching way. And in my next slide, we'll talk about the teaching way. 24% said they like group work. There you go. Many of the students get bored in classes where they're not allowed to discuss or talk or participate in any way. 8%, this whole group, 8% said they liked class activities. That's 8. And then also the teacher-student communication, the second 8 there. Then new things, class atmosphere, fun class participation. Can you see how positive all these things are about what students like in a class? Right from the teaching way to the group work to class participation. These were the actual responses they gave. There were 106 participants that took part in this study. What do you enjoy about class? And the way of teaching, which 42% of them said, were things like teacher kindness, teacher attitude, teaches in a nice way, helps us to understand, is entertaining, gives feedback, clear explanations, someone who's easy to understand, someone who uses different methods. So think about the way you teach and how you're going to influence students to want to participate in your class. The 25 of them, or 24%, that spoke about group work, they really enjoyed it. They said it helps them to share ideas. They like to brainstorm ideas. It was more interesting. There was lots of laughter. They were with friends. And they could interact with new people. It was fun. It's engaging. It helped develop my communication skills. So all the rub off from using group work. Activities in class they like drawing on the foot. There you go. They enjoyed that. The linking activities, the comparison and contrast tables we did, where they would draw up tables where they compared themselves to their brother, or they contrasted themselves and their mom. So all these kind of tables that you could actually do in the class. They enjoyed communication with the teacher and students and class discussions. So remember what CAP says, that the topics must be relevant and meaningful and current to students. So if you talk about things that are interesting to them, social media, COVID-19, conflict, bullying, you're sure to get them to listen and want to explore those topics. So here's what they said. They like group work, time flies when they are having fun, participation, practicing, class atmosphere. If you're entertaining, it helps, and I think a lot of you are entertaining, that it's interesting, and talking, discussing things with teachers. They actually enjoy this. What do you enjoy about class? This is the low percentages, learning new things. The class atmosphere, chill and laid back atmosphere, encourages learning rather than a very regimented, direct, disciplined type of atmosphere. Remember I said don't worry about noise, discussion is good. Class is not boring, fun class, make it fun for them. Remember, learning must be fun. So give them unexpected things to do. Sometimes it's drudgery, but try and think of something unexpected and different. Give them time to participate. Don't just let one or two or three of them participate, but let everyone. And that's why I said group work is the ideal, pair work is ideal for this. Allow them to communicate in their second language. And 1% like this, I think only one person, but that is also was also enjoyed. And doing practices every day, they like that. So what are the solutions to language learning in the classroom? This was a little paragraph they wrote. I don't think you can read it, but I'm just taking something out of it. That teachers need to make it easier. Remember your instructions and what you assume and what you're not orientating your students to. For them, the students to concentrate and manage their time to study. All these things are so important. And here's what somebody said. I never want to miss your class because I feel I lost something important. So to have students to say, oh my word, I can't be in your class today, it's a loss for me because I always do something that's important. So teaching for language proficiency. This is my final slide, I think, okay. No, there's 2 more slides. Teachers cannot be complacent. That means you can't be satisfied to the extent to which your teaching and learning practices can either constrain, that's limit the students, or enhance, help them to develop learner possibilities to participate and acquire language discourses. So never be complacent about the effect that you can have within the teaching and learning environment. Can either constrain those practices or can enhance them so they can participate and acquire the language discourses within the classroom. Okay, so here's my conclusion. Literacy's acquisition. To acquire the literacy, the academic literacy, and develop discourse. Is it a language problem? That's the question I'm saying. Because no one acquires those literacies naturally. It's not just going to happen in the classroom like magic. You're going to have to do something about it as a teacher. And this acquisition will often depend on the literacy practices from the past. So I know often the grade 8 teachers will blame the primary school for the lack of ability of students to read and write. And yes, unfortunately, those are going to impact on it, either positively or negatively. But remember, acquiring the literacies is not just going to happen. You've got to specifically extend it to your learners in the present. So you've got to be cognizant of what they've learned in the past. Remember prior knowledge and how important that is. Remember the whole idea of building on that knowledge and extending it. And you within your classroom can't say, I can't teach them because teachers in primary school did this. You've got to take them where they are at and specifically extend them to the present. And one of my ways I'm going to sort of hope you've actually taken cognizance of is the importance of clear instruction, the importance of practicing and doing things with your students and making the classroom a fun and interesting place to be, where they feel at home, where they don't feel stressed, where they don't feel conflicted, but they look forward to learning the language. That's it. Okay. That's it for me. Thank you for all your hard work. Some of you have said it's been a tough time, but that's what happens. And I think you've all worked very hard. I hope you've learned something. And just remember the importance of practice does make perfect. And just stay calm. Okay. Good evening then, and chat to me if you've got any problems, and we speak soon. That's it, Simon.
Thanks, Marcel. That was a great session.
Simon, I'm only on at 6 o'clock, I think, again. Is that right?
That's right. There's another session between your two, so you've
Yeah.
got time to enjoy this beautiful evening.
Okay. Thank you then. Take care. I'll chat soon.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.